is an induction motor with capacitive start. Those are kind of bigger motors. The difference between the two, those don't have good low end starting torque, and they need capacitors to change the power factor in order to get them to fire up, and then there's a switch. These are excellent because they have oodles of low end torque. Tons and tons of torque when it's not spinning a thing in that fast. They are fucking fantastic motors, and they run on DC or AC because they are self-commutating. They're mechanically commutating. This is, you can think of this little bit here as an inductor, or not an inductor, oh my god, I'm losing my mind, as an inverter. You know, the kind of thing you plug into your car, it's got 12 volts and it's 120 volts out, pure sine wave. Well, this does the same thing essentially. It takes DC, turns it into AC for the motor. That means that this can run on DC or AC. Oh, and series wound, because if we follow the electricity, it goes through the field windings and then over to the brush and then over to the armature, the spin-a-thinger, and then back to the neutral, or vice versa, because of course the pixies are actually not going one direction, they're going both directions. They're just sort of shuttling back and forth. Physically, here's the field winding, rosin dipped, appears to be rosin dipped, and has some fabric on there to keep everything packed together, prevent vibration from wearing through the insulation on the magnet wires. And then silicon steel laminations for the magnetic core. Very small laminations as well, not thick at all. So that's great. It looks ugly, but I mean, the proof in the pudding, the thing is old and it's not burnt out. Here's the armature. This is the one component that modern tools excel at. These older ones aren't even the new ones are head and shoulders better than these old ones. This is crusty here. Look at the laminations. It's been stamped, all chowdered right to rat shit. Push the laminations right down in, and the balancing is done just with a drill bit. You see, this is interesting though. I haven't seen this. Normally they'd epoxy this on the tail end to stake the conductor to the comm bar. What they've done is this has been dipped either lacquer or on rosin or some insulating material, some dielectric material, but it's also been wrapped with fiberglass, possibly some sort of cotton twine, in order to keep that nice and tight. I wouldn't have expected them to do this, but that is the sign even back in the day. And even though this isn't as good as modern day ones, they still took care to make sure this would last a long, long time. Now, although the insulation on this is still good, there's no burnt spots, it is starting to go. You can see it's cracking up here, and this must have been factory bubbles, but just, I don't know, gross. Nasty stuff in there. Focus, you fuck. Asbestos, grinding dust. So we can see here, this would pull up from the bottom. They don't make the fan like this anymore, with good reason. Clearly, the mitigation for balancing is useless after it gets in service because of this bowl shape. It accumulates shmoo. That shmoo has mass, which pulls off the balancing of this rotor. So that might be why, part and parcel of the reason they needed such big bearings. I mean, look at the size of that bearing. Shielded on one side, maybe even sealed. Ugh. That dry dust feeling. No, just shielded. Appears to have worked. It's a deep groove ball bearing. I can't see, there's no markings at all on it. Now, you'll very seldom hear me say this, but Dr. Watson, I have a clue. Made in the USA. They don't make them like that anymore. Just not economic to do so. 39. No. That's a metric designation. Made in the USA, not a chance. And look at the size of her. 39 would be way bigger than that. That's not right. I mean, it can't be. I'm flabbergasted. Speaking of metric, it occurred to me that they might be onto something here. When they buy a sheet good, instead of going by gauge thickness, you know, a 12 gauge, 14 gauge, which then you have to go and look up to see how thick that actually is. They sell it by the thickness. They cut out the middleman. You don't need to go and reference. If you want 0.5 millimeter sheet good, you buy 0.5 millimeter sheet good. They might be onto something, these metric guys. Just cleaning this up a bit, and it's actually not aluminum, not magnesium, it's zinc, die-cast zinc, cast in place right around the rotor. Nice little process there. Interesting. You'd never see that nowadays. Although you could possibly see, like in that worm and wheel gear, that worm actually, the bronze was a sintered bronze. It would have been powder metal and then sintered together. It wouldn't have been cast as one piece in that. You remember just the previous Vigeo, the previous bolter, I did the worm and wheel gearbox there, industrial Lego, and I said that that brass bronze piece would have been cast in place, phosphor bronze. Probably not. I was mistaken on that one. I bet you it was metal injection molded or that process. Now we have a look at the pinion gear here. Sharp, quite worn. You could definitely shave with that. The other thing is motor wind or rewind mechanic or electrician. If you're familiar with that, why would they have, could you tell me why they would have dye come on there, that blue dye? And you can see we sort of missed the plot there, lost the plot. What effect would that have, and why would they do that? I appreciate it if you could let us know. Now we have a look at the bearing, just cleaning that off to see if we can get, and unfortunately it is hooped. It's got a built-in detent, so we're gonna have to change that bearing out. Yeah, keep her coming, buddy. Now we're going to have a look at the gear housing. Oh, that reminds me of something. Yeah. Yes, I am a 12-year-old boy, both in temperament and maturity. Look at her chooch. I will very likely need to take this big gland end off in order to get it through, or maybe, but very good idea here. Some car painter, well, you can tell a car painter did this on account of the electrician's tape. If anybody dealing with grease or oil did this, they would not use electrician's tape because it gets so bloody disgusting, sticky. I mean, I can deal with wet, I can deal with cold, I can deal with hot, I can deal with sandy, muddy, but sticky, fucking gross. So what you actually, the proper way to do this is zap straps. Now this is great. Look at this. Look at her. Yeah, very clever. Simple, elegant. So elegant. Well, yeah. Okay, so input here, probably 20-to-1 reduction or so. The input pinion drives this bowl here, which is has a bearing here and a big old shaft. Now this would have to be a roller bearing or something, because otherwise this would want to weeble wobble around. So there's something special going on with that bearing, gotta be. And what happens is this tourniquets, and there's a bearing on here, but it's not retained perfectly perpendicular to the axis of the bearing. It's actually on an angle. It's been cut on the not the horizontal, not the vertical, on an angle. It escapes me. I'm having a stroke here. But look at what's going on. That's what's doing it. So this little ball and socket here has to be really, really skookum in order to be able to take the 300-pound gorillas stalling this right out. So I would say that is a weak point. However, this has been used so much. And then of course we have a special sintered bronze bushing here, oil light bushing, nice and solid for a linear slide like this, and not worn out at all. Solid. Same thing in the front end, big, but you can see how nice and long that is. There's a big long bearing surface, and then on the front, the bearing's gotta be 1.75 inches long. Yeah, like 40 millimeters, something like that. Deep, deep. So a lot of bearing surface on there. Not worn out at all. This is a nice, simple, elegant mechanism. Beautiful. So I don't get it. This is a metric socket head screw. This can't be as old as I'm giving it credit. This is a nice gear. We can tell it's been nitrided, hardened, and not tumbled after the fact, so hobbed. We can tell that by the patina on it, that bluish patina. And I was wrong. There's not just this bearing. So this is a ball bearing because this runs in the housing on a nice little needle bearing. I would have thought that they would use a sintered bearing for that, just a sintered bronze bushing. But nope, they went whole hog and went for a nice needle bearing. On the shaft, they've made it D, and that's in order to prevent this from rotating. So all that, the rotational force, the twisting, is all taken up by this bushing. Now, if this bushing wallers out, you're gonna get some weeble wobble. So you know if your tool, if the blade is moving back and forth like that, you know that this bushing is hoopa-jooped. So there's the socket, and it's just a drilled hole, surprisingly. So we're relying on this distance to not change in order for this to retain. There's no positive retention other than just this distance. We can see there's starting to be some wear on this. Look, a wear pattern and a little bit of wear on the socket, but I bet you this is hard as a coffin nail. Yeah, just skates right across. Nice hardened. That would be forged, I imagine. We'll pull that off and have a look. This is cool. Prior to the days of CNC, how would you set up to machine that? You need to turn this not concentric with this. This is straight through the middle of the shaft. This is off kilter. Look at that. That's cool. Yeah. Check this out. So there is a location hole. So they must have had a purpose-built machine that turned these and ground them, because that's a bearing, bearing seat anyway, and then undercut this shaft as well. So the undercut in order to relieve the stress so it doesn't crack right there. And then, yeah, incredible. Nice. That's a nice detail because it's totally not what you'd expect. Purpose-built machine strictly to machine a shaft off center, not even off center, but off center line. Pre-CNC, I mean, tool makers, it's like voodoo. Hats off. It's like the radio free RF guys in electronics. Like, it's just black magic voodoo how they figure this stuff out. Yeah. The mind boggles. Very cool. Very, very cool. I would love to see the machine that this is made on. Now we got her apart, and I want to keep this tool. I'm going to polish it right up. It'll be beautiful. Mint. I don't have a Sawzall, so it's perfect. Just doing a machine audit here, and yeah, this bearing, crusty. It's on the way out. I don't know if you can hear that. Probably not through my talking, but it is crusty. Seen better days. So we are going to source these bearings. I'll take this out, clean them up. We'll get the numbers off them. First off, what we do is we measure the bearings. OD 118, ID 49, well 50, no, thickness, and ID 35. That way, if you can find the number, then you can cross-reference and make sure you're getting what you need. Otherwise, if the number is too rusty or it's not on there, like this one, this one, not on there, you can, no, which one? One of them here, oh yeah, it's got it in a different spot. NTN, nice West German. This is the vintage, made in West Germany. So before, East Germany would have been the communist bloc, and West Germany was, you know, the good stuff coming from West Germany. But basically, you measure the thickness, the OD, the ID, and that way you just go to your bearing guy or your catalog and find out what bearing you need. In this case, we'll likely be able to find it in here. They're easier now. deep fried butterball. Allowances must be made and so forth. Just look in the Crackmaster car catalog for the bearings. I haven't grown up with this, so I'm not familiar with it. I'm sure certain people amongst us know exactly where to go. Now that we could tell, if I hadn't got old, is 6002. It's a very common bearing. Deep groove ball bearing. We'll just look, and we're not necessarily going to buy from McMaster, but that'll give us a baseline for the pricing. You always want to get 3 quotes on everything if you can. A bearing, you know, if you're buying one bearing, whatever. But if you're buying any number of things, you get a baseline price from the catalog from your supplier, and then you go and get 3 quotes, and that makes sure that you're not getting ripped off. You're getting the best deal. But we'll let this thing season on the healing bench and wait for the bearings to arrive. We'll replace the bearings, repack it, and see how she chooches. Now this thing, in my opinion, skookum is frig. Old school cool, man. All, like, they don't make them like this anymore, and they're fucking awesome. So, we'll have a look. We'll put this back together, as I say, and we'll have a look at the modern equivalent. Thanks for watching. Keep your dick in a vice. Gentlemen, welcome back to the shop today. A treat especial. I kind of got cornholed by my old procrastination. What, you thought I was going to weld? Well, so did I. But some old codger came out with a skill saw video, what piqued my interest, and I should probably move this. And we're going to get, oh my God! I got some gravity in there. That's when men were men and sheep were scared. Jeezless. So what we're going to do is get 2 birds stoned, 1 bush. We're going to send this off after we do the compromisation betwixt and between the new and the old. We're going to send this to the tool restoration channel, and he can have a go at it or throw it out or whatever the fuck he wants. I owe him some other parts as well. Yeah, that's a great channel. But what brought this on is the Craftsman channel. I forget the name. Anyway, you know, a silver-haired foxy fella there, been working in the trades for. Here's the thing: when you work in heavy industry for any amount of time, right off the hop, you can tell the fucking goofs from the quality. And this guy, that is absolute gold, to be able to look over the shoulder of a master and pick up, you know, stuff that was hard fought for him 30 years ago, and you pick it up for the cost of a subscription, which is fuck all. It's free. It's just, it blows my mind. So I actually really enjoy his channel. Kind of longer format, a bit of rambling, chatting, you know. And the thing is about that, also class act, right? You can watch him in your mother's hacienda on her Chesterfield or vinyl covered Chesterfield, no problem. Wouldn't say shit if he had a mouthful of it. The warm Norman Rockwell glow of false nostalgia aside, while this is completely metal, as witnessed by how heavy the Jeezless thing is, pity the poor car painter what's got to climb up on the rafters to wake everybody up at 6:30 a.m. on a cold fall morning. Look at that, aluminium, magnesium. I believe that's aluminium. That would just sink the heat right out of your hand. You'd be, my knuckles are aching just thinking about it. So there's something to be said for newfangled plastiques. At least they don't heat the sink or sink the heat nearly as bad as metal. Now, once you got work in her, though, of course, the heat from the motor would sink into the handle and actually keep you warmer. So to be one of those things, you just have to have an extra lung dart and cinch up your belt an extra notch or your sussy spenders and give her until the saw actually warmed up. Much fun to be had also on account of this metal bodies. What for sending a tingle through your dingle, you send the apprentice up to cut some rafters. Not to worry, just hung on to that TV antenna. You won't fall. Yeah. Now, if you're working this in the rain, this is light up like a Christmas tree, because the brushes, of course, are open. Any kind of moisture what gets in there is going to turn this whole thing into 120 volts. So what we do is we add a ground lug, so that allows the voltage to go from here to the ground instead of going from here into your body and into the ground. So they've added a little wire here. This must predate the ground lug, and I guess you would stick that on a metal enclosure box, you know, where you plug it in, or something like that, to prevent this from being at 120 volts AC when you go to grab it. You get a nasty surprise, that's for sure. While it's built like a triple coiler shithouse brick, it's still not indestructible. Got a little snag here, and this must have fallen and broken the casement. Also, would not surprise me at all if this is completely seized up on account of, well, a clue. So something has been leaking to make that fudge. Let's see if that, oh no, okay, we're still good. I gleaned over this. This is the Model 77. I don't believe it's the Mag 77. I think this predates the magnesium. It would be aluminum, I'm assuming, but it would still be very, well, they're both very light. Magnesium's a little bit lighter, but still they would be very rigid. This would be cast, of course, with a whole lot of silicon in the material, so that when it's solidified in the mold, you would have small grains. So that silicon allows the crystals of aluminium to form very quickly, to crystallize quickly, and they don't grow too big. So you reduce the ductility, you increase the strength, you reduce the ductility. That means it's not as bendy, it's not as bendable. So we see here, they haven't gone with a magnesium or aluminium foot. It's pressed steel. Why is that? Because very high ductility. It's high strength as well, but it's very ductile. That means you can bend it. So if you drop this and you bend your foot, you can bend it back and it's not going to break. Now, part and parcel of having that very fine, rigid grain structure is it's very strong, but it's not very ductile. So the Essential Craftsman, what the fella's name is, the Essential Craftsman had a question in his mind that he was going to check out just by testing whether or not these magnesium bases, well, first off, these are die cast, so this would be injected into a die, a tool steel die, probably H13, and then solidified differentially, so cooled in different sections. If you were to cut this, I'd be willing to bet there'd be some spring in there, because there's internal stresses. They do that on purpose when they cool the injection, not the injection mold, but the die casting. When they cool these, they cool them differentially so that there is some spring in there. They're more rigid than they would be if they cooled at the same rate. So if we cut this, it would very likely spring a little bit. You get that if you ever are able to cut an alloy wheel off a vehicle, you'll be fucking amazed. The thing will literally go from straight, you get the saw in there, and then it just goes poing, and that is because there's so much built up stress from the differential cooling. They do that by purpose. Now, long story short, this is going to be not very ductile at all. Just by looking at the manufacturing, the die casting, and the material, it's not going to, this thing is going to break, not bend, essentially is what I'm telling you. It's going to break, it's not going to bend, and once it's bent, you try and bend it back, it's going to break. At the end of the video, I'm going to give this away to a commenter on the original teardown. I'm going to send him a basket case, so we're not going to put this back together. We can let him put that back together. So I don't want to ruin the foot, but what we can do here, we'll stick the dick in the vise, and I'll just show you what I mean. Engage your safety squints. There's going to be some splintering. You see what happened there, okay? We didn't bend. We actually broke a chip off. So it's very, very rigid. It's very tough to bend. But when it does bend, it breaks. Now, closer look at that focus, you fuck. Thank you. You can see here, you don't get that with steel. It started to give here, come on. Started to give here, and then it took a chip out. Like a brittle material, like a teacup. Same thing here, where the jaw was engaged, it took chips out. You don't get that with steel. It bends, it schmooze over type deal. It mushrooms, it doesn't chip off. So we can see very rigid, but you bend it, you fucking gotta buy another one, because you try and bend it back, it's gonna break. No blade lock to be found, but the blade does have carbide inserts, so it doesn't, you know, it doesn't predate. Let's see, righty tighty, except for carpenters. Lefty loosey, lefty loosey. We'll get her. We'll get her. Ah, there we go. There we go. That's the one. Yeah, lefty loosey. You can tell how much I use a circ saw. As little as humanly possible. Oh, interesting blade. Look at that. Wow. Ooh. And the seal's blown right out of her, clearly. Turns out, it's just rusty as frig. And the blade, as witnessed by the summer teeth used for, I would say, by forming carpenters. I know that because I stripped forms. I was a stripper. Put me through school. A fucking hard work. Speaking of young, dumb, and full of cum, my buddy got me the job, and it was good paying. It was like $14 an hour just for unskilled labor. But the thing is, they paid more, but you had to give her. No fucking dicking around. No back talk. Just you make the cut, you're in. You don't, you're down the road. So I want, you know, that was a good paying job in between classes. So anyway, I hadn't been hardened. I wasn't hardened up yet, and so the boss come around. Hey, you got those? You got all those nominal? You got those tuber all declawed and so forth? Yeah. There's 2 skids there. There's some more. I'm just about finished. Okay, well, finish up there and get started on those 2 skids. I want you to cut steaks. We should cut steaks. Oh, yay long, real sharp, pointy, and then once you're through that big old pile, come and see me. I got more for you. So I set to making steaks, and fucking here's what you do, right? You cut it to length, and then you bend down. You sort of rest it in the crook of the inside of 1 foot across another foot, the other foot, so it's kind of cantilevered off. And you're bending down. You got the circ saw, and you give her one cut like this. And then you flip it over, get her 1 cut like that. So what I had been doing was cutting both sides, but then the blade gets close to your leg. You know, it's kind of sketchy. So here's me thinking, right? You flip it over. So about day 2, get in the crummy, go home. Fuck me, boys. I don't know if I can. This is tough. My back is just ratched, just fucking ratched. So they all kind of give a snigger and. Well, you got any tricks for me? Yeah, you're the fucking fancy pants going to school. You're surrounded by lumber. You're surrounded by tools. Why don't you knock together some oh, fuck. Knock together a fucking workbench, you idiot. Smarter, not harder. I don't know if this bit of Bonnie work is by design or by the fact that it's worn right in. No guillotine action on the guard. That's beautiful. As the evidence points out, this thing, it thrives on abuse and neglect, but we see a material property. This is aluminum. We can see it's fatigued. It's been bent, and instead of bending, it's actually cracked. We can get right in there. We see. Let's see. Yeah, look at that. You focus. You fuck. There you go. There's a crack right there. Cracked right half in 2. Well, yeah. That thing is not long for this world. We'll have to be rather ginger carefuling with that. Oh. Helps if you go the right direction. Ha! Not so fucking tough now, are you? Tap it, tap, tap. Oh, oh, ooh. Oh, some wood elf fucking hippie hair. Ah, it's on my hammer now. Ugh. Nothing fucking grosses me out even worse than dead tree carcass. Old people schmoo. Yuck. Look at this. Old tech. Old felt seal stuffing box. You can see how effective it is. Not very. Well, it does the auto oil change, so you never have to change the oil. You just keep adding oil. There's no ridges here from a Buna N double lip seal. No ridges at all, so no wear at all. Of course, with the nitrile rubber, any kind of ingress of dust or anything, it embeds in there and then wears that seal out. Here we see the effect of however many decades of use with a felt seal. Now, it doesn't work the best, but it also doesn't wear your components. There's a trade-off there. Now, this is a beauty part here. This would have been, remember, this would have been machined by a man, possibly a woman, or maybe even none of the above. I can't deem to assume someone's gender nowadays, but somebody came in here. This would have been a solid chunk of round stock, bucked it off, and very likely would have broached this, so they would have drilled this out, then broached it in a press, cut this OD, cut this down, had a little chamfer on here, cut this down to size to fit perfectly in the bore, cut this face here, faced this off, and came in with some sort of grinding tool or milling tool, and we can see it was quite big because of that radius there. It would have been a big one. Came in, switched, came in, machined it, switched, came in, machined it, and then ground and lapped this face. Look at this face here. Look at it. That's been ground. There is a lot of soul in this little part. This is very labor intensive manufacturing. Big bronze oilite bushing, and then a springama thing, what's been anchored, an index point way deep in there. And see, not too many value engineering sessions have put into this. Basically, this is what you can do when you're the only game in town. Is make it so friggin' skook 'em and not even worry about how they put it together. Don't worry, the boys on the floor will figure that out. What we need is a spring right there. Look at that. How the fuck do you assemble that in a hurry? All that construction talk jostled my memory. This is funny as shit. Intermission. This is how corporate YouTube videos should be. All of them.
I've been doing this about 4 months, and I'm certainly learning a lot. That's what people tell you when you work construction. They say stuff like,
wow, that's real work. You're gonna learn a lot doing that.
and it's funny because none of those people actually work construction, and I think it's for those reasons. It's real work, and you're gonna learn a lot. And I'm certainly learning a lot. I'm learning a lot about being an adult. You know, stuff like powering through emotions. All the time. And a shart. I've never had a shart before, but I know them pretty well now. If you don't know what a shart is, the ingredients are overexertion and gas station cookies. You can make one at home if you want. Just pound 3 of those and try to lift a stack of 2x4s. You'll figure it out. But first, I didn't think I'd fit in because some of these guys, they use phrases like a sea hair. And I came in using phrases like a wee bit and a smidge. You gotta be direct when you talk to people on the job, but you don't have to be good with like words, because at first you say about 3 things. You know, you say yeah, ah, and then that laugh people do when they almost die, like. Sometimes the pace and pressure of framing make for a tense work environment. You might be given very bad instructions and be yelled at for following them. Be given very specific instructions and then be yelled at for following those. 3 what? A lot of issues are resolved by communicating.
What's under here? Oh, a nice cork gasket. Look at that. Corked like they grew from a tree. And the problem, of course, with cork is It's It's not impermeable. It does leak. It oozes schmoo. Yeah. That's a little bit gnarly, but nothing compared to an actual human hair. Speaking of value engineering, here's the way they properly did it. They retened the bearing, not with 3 little fasteners like in the new one. Where is that part? Yeah, look at this. So what they did was they took a fastener just with washers, and it's actually proud of the housing, so they got the washer all cantilevered. It's real goofy arrangement. Now this is a what is that? 6203 RS, so double lip seal. 6203. That's a benchmark bearing for me. It's the 12 is chasing after the 17 to tell the 40 that it dropped $1,000 bill. So this will take 1,000 pounds static. Oh fuck! I lost it. Is it static or no static? And it's 12 millimeters thick, 17 on the ID and 40 on the OD. Very standard bearing. You see that in a lot of stuff. It'd be interesting to see what this bearing is. We can see the retention much better. They've got a pressed and formed, a die over a mandrel. They've formed this punch pressed steel retainer. Oh, just give me the shivers. But so we'll get that apart and see what kind of bearing is in there. I got a feeling it was bigger back in the day. A little mild steel punch here, very short. Oh, that's bronze though. Now what do we do? Maybe aluminium. Maybe I'll go find an aluminium stick. Well, sometimes you get lucky. Even a blind pig, am I right? Just fell right out of there. It was meant to be. Now this little bearing here, made in the USA, ND 3200 series. Made in the USA. That's a museum piece right there. Now you want to talk about a beautiful part. This would have been done on a hobbing machine and ground. Look at the surface finish. Triple start. Touched by human hands, broached, turn the OD, ground this, or cut the sluts and then ground it. That's a beautiful part right there. Oh fuck yeah! You know it's a good one when there's fucking schmoo everywhere. Stickier the better. This is interesting because I'm going to show you here value engineering at its finest. No changes ever get made just for the sake of making changes. The reason someone makes a change to a tool or a design is money. Either they want to make the component cheaper, or the component failed prematurely and they're losing money because it's not reliable enough, and the customers are getting wind that it's not reliable enough. So the marketing department says, hey, listen, we got to increase the chooch factor on those because we're not selling them anymore. They're too cheap. You see this all the time. Now, look at the drill I just took apart from the Hazard Fraud, the Hercules one. It advertises an all-metal gearbox. Now, if you go back in the vid, I took the gearbox apart. It's plastic housing. So when they introduced the tool, it very likely had all-metal gearbox. But the value engineering team came in and said, okay, right, these are selling okay, let's reduce the price. How do we reduce the price? More plastique! Yay! Everybody wins. So in this case, we go from the ancient design to the new design, and we see just how much they pair off in each iteration.